You may be lying in bed now, letting the quiet of the night settle softly around you. The light is low, and your thoughts, once tangled like branches, begin to gently loosen. Outside, perhaps the wind brushes against your window, not with force, but with familiarity, as if the air remembers you, as if it carries a memory older than breath. Inside, you drift, not far, not fast, just enough for the walls to blur and time to fold in on itself. Before there were cities, or calendars, or names for things. Before belief became doctrine, and stars were mapped into constellations, there was only the beginning, not a loud one, not a spark or thunderclap, but a hush, a silence so deep it became a space where creation could stretch. Tonight, we'll listen for what came next. Two stories whispered beside fires beneath open skies and written in sacred texts where the first words are always the quietest. From deserts and rivers, from temples long crumbled, from fires tended by fading tribes. These myths of beginning, soft, sacred, and older than memory, invite you to loosen. Let your breath slow. Let the edges of the day fall away, and allow the world to be created again. Gently, just for you. Chapter 1: The Soul of the Beginning. Egypt's sacred waters creation in the ancient world of Egypt did not begin with fire or fury, but with water. Still, deep, endless water. The Egyptians called it Nun, the primeval ocean, a vast, unshaped flood that held everything, yet nothing. No light, no form, no time, just potential, floating, waiting. It wasn't chaos in the way modern minds might imagine it. It was peace before division, wholeness before separation, sacred stillness that carried the memory of everything that would one day exist. And from this stillness, a being rose. Not suddenly, not violently, but like a lotus opening in the dark, slow, certain, and inevitable. Adam was his name. He was not born, for there was no one to birth him. He simply became. Self-created, self-contained, the first God, Adam, stood upon the first mound of land that emerged from the waters of Nun. A small hill called the Benben, the origin of pyramids, of temples, of order itself. This hill was sacred not because of its size, but because it was the first boundary drawn against the formlessness. And so, in Egyptian thought, creation began not with war or power, but with emergence, with boundaries, with breath rising from water. From Adam came other deities, air and moisture, sky and earth. Shu, god of air, Tefnut, goddess of moisture. Together, they gave birth to Geb, the earth, and Nut, the sky. And so the world unfolded, not in a moment, but through a sacred unfolding, step by step, breath by breath. These gods were not abstract ideas. They were presence, felt in the heat of the desert, the rhythm of the river, the hush of dusk. In the city of Heliopolis, priests told this version of creation every evening. The temple walls were inscribed with a story, not to record it, but to keep it alive, to let it breathe through generations. And each night, as the sun dipped beneath the horizon, the people of Egypt trusted it would rise again, because it always had. Because the story held that creation wasn't a single event frozen in the past. It was something that echoed. Each dawn repeated that original rising. Each flood of the Nile mirrored the sacred waters of Nun. Each cycle of life and death was part of the cosmic breath, expanding, returning dot to the Egyptians. The world was not built. It was sustained through balance, through Mat, the principle of harmony, order, and truth. Mat was not a thing to believe. It was a way to be. A divine rhythm that kept the world from slipping back into none, into silence, into nothing. This rhythm touched everything: the path of the stars, the rituals of burial, the voice of a scribe writing carefully by oil lamp. Even the act of speaking creation aloud was sacred. To tell the story was to participate in it. To remember it was to sustain it. Imagine a priest standing in dim candlelight, his voice steady, shaped by generations. Not rushing, not performing, but reciting, as if helping the world hold itself. Together, he might begin with these words, carved in stone. When nothing existed, Adam rose on the hill. He created himself. He spoke his name, and the world began. The gods were not distant in this telling. They were not behind veils. They were present in breath, in water, in form. Even the pharaoh was considered a living bridge between the sacred and the shaped. He carried Mat not as a symbol, but as a task to live out the first balance, to walk the boundary between none and the world, to keep chaos at bay by living rightly. And so, temples were built in precise alignment. It was a vein of the god Hopi, delivering life, restoring balance, reminding the people that the sacred flows in cycles. In this vision, there is no need to rush, no crisis in the beginning, no battle to win the world, only the gentle surfacing of shape from stillness, only the world rising again and again from sacred water. In one myth, Adam weeps, and from his tears, humans are formed. We are, in this telling, born from divine emotion. not as punishment, not as an accident, but as a quiet response to being alone. The gods did not need servants. They needed continuity, witnesses, breath carried forward. The temples of Egypt now crumbled once held echoes of these words. The ceilings painted with stars, the walls lined with hymns. People would come not to plead, but to participate, to stand within the rhythm of what always was. You begin to feel the weight of this vision. How quiet it is. How vast, how certain. A world born not with noise, but with knowing. Tonight, as your thoughts slow, you might imagine that water, deep, warm, unending. You might see the first hill rise in your own mind, and Adam standing on it, not speaking, not moving, just being. And you too might rest there, balanced between breath and stillness. Chapter 2: Fire from Ice. Norse myths of the Great Gap. Before the names. Before the names, before even time had shape, there was only a gap. The Norse called it Gingop, a vast, silent void between two primal worlds to the north. A realm of ice, Niflheim, dark, heavy, frozen, breathed a cold mist that drifted endlessly toward the center to the south. A land of fire, Muspelheim, bright, chaotic, burning. Its sparks leaped outward, carried by winds no one had yet named Dot, and in the space between, the gap, Ginnungagap was not empty, not truly. It was potential without form, like the pause before the first breath, or the quiet before snow falls. No hands shaped it, no eyes watched it, but from the meeting of opposites, from fire's light and ice's weight, something began to stir. When the heat of Muspelheim touched the frost of Niflheim, the ice melted just enough, not into rivers or oceans, but into life. From the thawed drops came the first being, Ymir, the frost giant Dot. He did not speak. He simply existed, vast, slow, and sleeping. There was no sky above him, no land beneath, only the breath of cold and the glow of flame spinning gently around his form. From the sweat of his skin, other giants emerged, great forms without names, drifting through the mist, and from the ice another presence was born. A cow called Ajimbla. She nourished Ymir with her milk, and she herself fed on the salty ice. As she licked the blocks of frozen time, something else began to take shape. Day by day, her tongue revealed a new figure, Buri, the first of the gods. From him would come Buro, and from Buro, Odin, Vili, and Vili. These three brothers were not born of frost. They carried fire, clarity, will Dot, and with time, they saw what Ymir was. not evil, not wrong, but unshaped. Ymir's body held the world, but it had no purpose. So they acted. The three brothers slew the giant, not in rage, but in sacrifice. From Ymir's blood, they formed rivers and seas. From his bones, they raised mountains. His teeth became stones. His skull, the sky, and sparks from Muspelheim became the stars, set into place inside the dome of his hollowed head. The world in this telling is not given. It is carved, built slowly, deliberately, from something raw, something sleeping. The Norse did not imagine creation as a gift from above, but as a shaping of what already was. Even the gods had to act, had to choose. The earth was formed not through command, but through transformation. Ymir, the first being, became the land itself. And in doing so, he gave the gods a canvas on which to paint order. They placed Midgard, the world of men, at the center, a ring of land surrounded by Ymir's sea blood, guarded from chaos. Above it, they set Asgard, home of the gods, linked by the trembling bridge of light, Bifrost, and far below, in the roots of all things, they knew darkness remained in Hell and in the shadows of Ymir's forgotten kin. But for now, the world stood balanced. Sky above, earth beneath, sea around, fire and ice still breathing at the edges. This was not a paradise. It was a world of tension, of cycles, of watching. The gods walked among what they had made, but they did not control it absolutely. The old frost still whispered at the borders. The fire still threatened to rise, and men newly formed stood at the center, shaped not from nothing, but from driftwood found on the shore. One of the gods gave breath, another gave mind, the third gave form, and so even humans were a joining of what was found. And what was given to live in this world was to remember the beginning, to feel the cold edge of ice, the distant warmth of fire, and the silence of the gap that still lingers between each breath. You begin to feel it now, that quiet hum behind things, the presence of something old, not gone, just waiting in Norse memory. Creation is not a comfort. It is a responsibility, a watching of the edges. The story doesn't end in peace. The gods know that what was shaped can be UNSHAP. They know the frost will rise again. That fire will one day spill past its bounds, but still they act. Still they carve. Still they set stars in the sky each night, and maybe that's enough. You imagine the vastness of Ginnungagap not as fear, but as stillness, a space that holds both fire and frost without forcing them to change. You imagine the first drop of melted ice, and how quietly it must have fallen, how even silence can begin the world. Chapter 3: The Cosmic Egg, Hindu Visions of Eternal Returning. The vast silence before time. There is no spark, no crack of lightning, no divine hand reaching down, only stillness. A stillness so complete that even thought has not yet stirred. This is not a void of absence, but a fullness not yet shaped, a sacred pause, pregnant with everything. Within this pause floats the Hiranyagarbha, the golden womb, the cosmic egg. It does not shine with fire. It does not call attention to itself. It simply is, suspended in the waters of non-being. It holds all that ever was, all that ever will be, folded softly into one luminous seed. From this egg, the world will be born, but not just once. This is not a creation myth of a single beginning. It is a vision of eternal return. In Hindu cosmology, time is not a straight line, marching from birth to end. It is a wheel, a great cycle, turning endlessly, like the breath of something deeper than God's. The sacred texts speak not of one universe, but of countless ones, each emerging from the egg, each dissolving again into stillness. This rhythm is known as Brahman's breath, not a being, but being itself, not a god with a form or a voice, but the sacred reality behind all things, unseen, unshaped, infinite. When Brahman exhales, the universe unfolds. Galaxies stretch like rivers, mountains rise, oceans churn. Life begins its slow, wandering path. And when Brahman inhales, everything returns, not in punishment, not in fear, but in peace, dissolving gently into silence. The Rig Veda, one of the oldest known spiritual texts, describes this process without certainty. Even the ancient seers admit they do not know how it began. Who really knows? Who can say from where it came, or how creation happened? Even the gods came after. There is something beautiful in that honesty, in the acceptance that not all things must be explained. Some may only be felt. The golden egg floats through this vision, not as an object, but as a symbol of wholeness, of unity, before division, before gods, before language, before the naming of night and day. Within the egg lies Prakriti, the primal nature, and Purusha, consciousness. Their meeting will birth the cosmos, not through force, but through unfolding. Out of the egg, the creator emerges, sometimes called Prajapati, sometimes Brahma, but always a reflection of the One. the all. He brings the world into being, not by command, but by sacrifice. From his body, the Vedas say, come the elements, the sky from his head, the earth from his feet, the moon from his mind, the sun from his eye. Creation is not a battle. It is an offering, and when the time comes, it will be offered back. In the Upanishads, the golden egg is not just the source of the world, but of the soul. Each person, each creature, each breath is seen as a reflection of the whole, the same light, housed in different forms. You begin to feel it, this soft rhythm beneath everything. Not rising to a final end, but returning again and again. Like waves in Hindu thought, this cycle is known as samsara, the wheel of birth, death, and rebirth, not as punishment, not as reward, but as movement, as the natural unfolding of karma. The weight of action, the echo of choice. Just as a seed becomes a tree, and the tree drops seeds again. The soul moves through lifetimes. No soul is condemned. No soul is forgotten. Each is drawn gently toward realization, toward moksha, liberation. But even liberation is not escape. It is a return to what always was, to the stillness behind movement, the silence behind sound, the breath that never ends. The egg cracks open, the world begins. The cycle turns and always it comes back. These ancient visions do not ask for belief. They offer a way of seeing, a way of resting into the truth that nothing is lost, that endings are not endings, that even in decay there is renewal. You imagine the egg now glowing softly in the dark waters of pre-creation, not cold, not empty, just waiting. Inside it, the stars already stir. Inside it, your breath already moves. In time, it will open. And again, the world will turn. Chapter 4. In the Dreaming, Aboriginal stories of song and shape before time wore a name. Before the ground held shadow, there was only the dreaming. Not a dreaming, not a memory, but a sacred reality that flows beneath all things in the heart of Australia's ancient land, long before cities rose or borders formed. The dreaming moved like breath, invisible but always present. It is not the past. It is not a story that was. The dreaming is timeless, ongoing, alive to the Aboriginal peoples. Creation is not a single act, but a continuing presence, an echo of song, a shape, still shifting beneath the surface of the world. They speak of ancestral beings, not as myths, but as truths walked into the earth. These beings took form as animals, spirits, people, and moved across the land in the dreaming. As they traveled, they sang, and as they sang, the world took shape. A mountain rises where a spirit paused. A river bends where a serpent slid. A star appears where a song ended. This is creation through song, not decorative, not symbolic, but literal. The world was sung into being. Every hill, every rock, every bend in the path. These are not just natural features. They are sacred sites, markers of songlines. Songlines are not simply music. They are maps, not drawn in ink, but remembered in voice, in breath, in walking. Each line holds the memory of an ancestor's journey, a sacred track across the country, holding knowledge of creation, of law, of relationship. To follow a songline is to move with reverence, to learn the land, not with the eyes alone, but with the spirit, to sing the world back to itself with each step. You imagine walking now, bare feet pressing into warm red earth. Above, the sky curves deep and wide. Below, the ground remembers dot, and through it all, the song flows in Aboriginal tradition. Every person is connected to a particular part of the dreaming. This is your totem, your spiritual lineage. It's not chosen. It's inherited, woven into you from before your birth. Your totem links you to a species, to a site, to a story. It is not owned. It is protected. It is held with care as part of a collective memory that stretches back through thousands of generations. The dreaming teaches responsibility, not just to the land, but to the balance of all things. The land is not property. It is kin. It is alive with memory, with law, with breath. To harm it is not only destruction, it is forgetting. For those who hold this knowledge, ritual and daily life are not separate. There is no divide between sacred and ordinary. All is part of the story. All is part of the song. This is why silence is never empty here. It listens. It carries the weight of footsteps, the vibration of chants, the low rhythm of clapsticks echoing through the eucalypt trees. There are countless dreaming stories, each unique to a people, a language, a place. But some names echo widely, like the rainbow serpent, a great being who shaped rivers and gorges as she moved, her scales leaving color in the land. She brings water, she brings life, she brings change, sometimes creation, sometimes destruction, always renewal. Or Tiddalik, the frog who drank all the water of the land. A gentle story, but also a teaching of balance, of sharing, of the danger of taking too much. Each tale is layered, not moral in the modern sense, but instructional. They teach how to live, how to move, how to see. Elders pass these stories down through ceremony, through dance, through body painting, through song. Nothing is written in books. It is lived. It is remembered with the body. The land itself is the archive, and the songs, the stories, the rituals, these are the keys. Colonial voices once called these myths, but they are not fantasy. They are law. They are science. They are philosophy. And they are spirituality, braided together, inseparable. The dreaming does not ask to be believed. Like breath, you don't have to understand it to feel its shape. There is no origin point, no beginning from nothing. The dreaming has always been, and always will be. It flows through time like underground water, invisible, but nourishing the root of everything. When someone dies, they return to the dreaming. When a child is born, they come from it. Birth is not arrival. Death is not departure. All is movement within the same field. The same breath, you begin to feel it now. The soft pulse of connection beneath everything. The land is not backdrop. It is body, and every step, every song is a remembering. You are not apart from this. You are within it. As all things are, so you follow the rhythm quietly, a line in a song that never truly ends. Chapter 5: The Weaving Sky. Incan beliefs from the Andes high in the Andes, where the air grows thin and the mountains hold silence like breath. The Inca watched the sky and listened for the voice of their creator. They called him Viracocha, not a god of thunder, nor fire, nor war, but of shaping, of starting, of beginning again. Viracocha emerges not in light, but in shadow. He rises from the dark waters of Lake Titicaca, an ancient inland sea perched among the peaks, where clouds touch water and stone remembers its own forming. From these sacred waters, he creates life, fashioning beings from rock and earth, giving shape where there was none, offering breath where there was only stillness. But the first creation does not hold. The world he makes is not yet right. So he starts again in these Andean myths. Creation is not a single, perfect act. It is trial, it is error, it is teaching. Even the gods must learn. Viracocha destroys the first people he molds, not with wrath, but with quiet purpose. He turns them back to stone, scattering statues across the valleys and hills, as if to remember what once was. Then, from the same dust, he tries again, and this time, he walks the land. Disguised as a humble traveler, he crosses rivers and mountains, observing his creation, teaching, restoring balance where it frays, where he walks, he speaks. And with each word, the world listens. The Inca do not imagine their creator as distant or unreachable. Viracocha is not confined to the sky. He moves among the people. He witnesses. He repairs, and when his journey is complete, he does not die. He simply disappears, walking westward across the sea, vanishing beyond the horizon. Even now, some say he may return. When the world forgets its balance, when disharmony grows, he may come back quietly as before in the world of the Inca. Creation is woven, not built. Everything is thread, sky and soil, river and ridge, life and afterlife. The word for the world is pasha, a concept that means not just place, but space and time together. There is the past world, the world of now, and the world to come, all layered upon each other. Like fabric, the Inca see life as movement between these layers, a weaving not yet finished. They do not separate the sacred from the daily. The mountain is not just a mountain. Each peak holds power. Each slope breathes story. Offerings are made to the apis coca leaves. Corn beer, small tokens, gifts to keep the balance. To ask for rain, for harvest, for harmony. Even time is sacred weaving. The Inca calendar does not turn in lines, but in cycles. Planting follows harvest. Sun follows moon. Beginnings fold gently into endings. And so, too, with the soul. They believe the human spirit does not vanish with death. It moves into another state, another layer of the woven sky. If one lives in balance, honors the spirits, respects the cycles, the soul journeys upward to live among the mountains and stars. If one strays, dishonors the land, disrupts the sacred order, the path becomes harder, more uncertain. But even here, there is no eternal damnation, only distance, and the hope of return. Their sacred texts are not written in ink. They are etched into stone, measured in architecture, carried in oral memory that the great temples of Cusco and Machu Picchu are not just structures. They are expressions of cosmology aligned with solstices, built from stone without mortar, as if shaped by the earth itself. At dawn, the sun rises through a notch in the mountains and spills across the temple stones, a ritual of light, repeated year after year. This is not performance. It is relationship between the people and the sky, between the sun and the soul. The Inca worship Inti, the sun god, but even he is not the highest. Above him stands Viracocha, always silent, always watching, the source behind all light. You begin to feel this now. A sense of quiet order, not rigid, but flowing, like the stone terraces that hold the earth in place. Incan belief shapes the world with care, with patience. Nothing is rushed. Nothing is random. Even suffering is understood as imbalance, a call to realign, not a punishment. You imagine standing high among the clouds, a breath caught between earth and sky. Far below, the rivers thread like silver veins through the green folds of the Andes dot, and above, the constellations turn, not just stars, but sacred animals, mythic beings. The Inca see patterns not only in the light, but in the darkness between stars. They trace the shapes of a serpent, a llama, a toad outlined, not in light, but in absence. It is a way of seeing that includes the unseen, the spaces between, the silence. You begin to understand that for the Inca, nothing is wasted. Even failure is remembered. Even darkness is shaped. Their myths do not promise perfection. They promise continuity, renewal, a return to harmony, and perhaps somewhere beyond the Western Sea, Viracaka waits, not to punish, not to rule, but to create again, when the time is right. When the weaving calls for another thread, and so high among the peaks, the sky remains open, and the soul, like the mountain, like the river, waits to be shaped once more. Chapter 6, Words of the Wind. The Hopi creation from beneath the earth in the quiet deserts of the American Southwest, where sandstone bluffs hold the memory of time. The Hopi speak of beginnings, not as explosions upward from beneath. Their origin story is not of falling stars or thunderous gods. It is a story of emergence. Humans do not appear all at once. They ascend from one world to the next, each one left behind, not with destruction, but with care. The Hopi believe we live now in the fourth world, but the first was underground, dark, and small, a place of early life, not yet shaped, not yet awakened. In this first world, people lived like insects, crawling, hunched, unaware of what could be. And yet, they were watched. The Creator, known as Tawa, the Sun Spirit, saw them and sent guidance. With the help of Sutuknung, his nephew and messenger, and Spider-Woman, Cave, the weaver of life, the people were taught how to grow, how to think, how to become. But when the world became unbalanced, when the people forgot harmony, they were guided to rise. Spider-Woman opened a passageway, a small hole called a saipapu, like a navel in the earth. Through it, the people emerged into the second world. It was brighter, more open. Here, they learned more: how to speak, how to farm, how to live in better rhythm with the land. But again, Imbalance crept in. Selfishness. Fulness. So once more, Spider-Woman led them upward, through another Sipapu, into the third world. This world was vast and beautiful. People built great cities, dug canals, made art. But with beauty came pride. And again, the world tilted out of harmony. This time, the end was not fire or flood. It was migration, a quiet parting. The Hopi do not speak of their past worlds as punished ruins. They speak of them as places that were outgrown, lessons learned, chapters closed with reverence, and so they climbed once more into the fourth world, the one we now inhabit. But the memory of that journey remains. Every Hopi home still includes a small Sipapu in the center of the floor, often within a ceremonial kiva, a symbol of that emergence, a reminder that we all came from below, that we all rise slowly, patiently, toward light in the Hopi view. Creation is not loud. It is not instant. It is process, woven like a basket, threaded like corn husk, shaped with the patience of sun on stone. The gods do not rush. They watch, they wait, and above all, they guide. Spider-Woman is not a distant deity. She is intimate. She whispers truths, teaches through dreams, and weaves connections between all things. She helped form the first humans by singing life into them, rubbing earth and spit between her fingers and shaping it with breath. The breath was sacred. It gave motion. It gave spirit, called Katsi. Even today, the Hopi recognize Katsi in the wind that moves across the mesas. They say it carries the voices of the ancestors, the soft warnings, the gentle reminders. The wind, like memory, never disappears. It just changes direction. You can feel that if you stand in the desert long enough, the stillness isn't empty. It listens. It holds stories in its silence. And in this fourth world, those stories are not forgotten. The Hopi believed their ancestors were told to settle where the signs were right, to walk across the land and leave petroglyphs along the way, marking their migration. These symbols, spirals, hands, footprints are found on canyon walls and under stone ledges, weathered but not erased. Each one speaks softly. We were here. We remembered. We moved with the sacred. This is not mythology. For sleep, it is instruction. The Hopi see the fourth world as fragile, a place that must be tended as carefully as one tends maize in dry soil. To live rightly means to stay in balance with the land, with the ancestors, with time itself. Ceremonies mark the seasons. Songs greet the rain. Masks and dances call forth spirits, not to entertain, but to sustain harmony. Even now, Hopi villages keep the old ways. Clans trace their lineage to ancient migrations. Elders teach that each person carries a piece of the weaving. And if one thread is broken, the whole must mend. You begin to see creation not as a beginning, but as a climb, one world to the next. Not in search of perfection, but deeper wisdom, and the path is not upward alone, it is inward. Toward humility, toward listening. You imagine the Saipapu, not just in a kiva, but within yourself. A quiet opening, a place to emerge from each time life becomes misaligned. You remember the wind, how it speaks without voice, moves without shape, yet carries. The oldest truths. The Hopi say this fourth world may also end if balance is forgotten again, but not in fire, not in anger. It would end the way it began, softly, gently, with guidance toward the next. And so, under the desert stars, as the wind presses against the stones, you listen for what still rises and wonder what world waits above the one we now call home. Chapter 7. Clay and Breath. Mesopotamia's silent gods. Between the rivers, something stirs. The Tigris and Euphrates wind through the plains, carving a land so fertile. The ancients called it Eden. This is Mesopotamia, the land between rivers, cradle of writing, birthplace of kings, and home to gods who do not roar, but murmur. Here, creation does not begin with thunder or fire. It begins with clay, soft, wet, pressed into shape by divine hands. In the oldest Sumerian myths, the gods are tired, exhausted, even burdened by the toil of sustaining the world. They grow weary of digging canals, stacking bricks, clearing the fields. These are not lofty beings above labor. They labor first, and when their patience wears thin, they call. Meeting, it is decided, a helper must be made. From the earth itself, they shape the first humans, not born, but formed, molded from clay, infused with the blood of a slain god, sometimes a rebel, sometimes a willing sacrifice, and awakened with breath, not a loud awakening. No flash of lightning, no command shouted into the wind. Just a soft intention, a whisper folded into the body like warm air into kill-fired dust. Humans are created to serve. That is their purpose. To tend the temples, offer food, carry out rituals, relieve the gods of their endless work. In this worldview, creation is not a gift of love, it is a bargain, and yet there is tenderness in the shaping. To mold a body from clay requires time, pressure, care, fingertips smoothing out the shoulders, pressing gently into the spine, drawing the curve of a mouth not to shout, but to speak offerings in the early morning. The gods are many: Inu, the high sky father; Enlil, the wind and storm; Enki, wise and watery, lord of deep knowledge; and Nin-Hersag, the great mother, goddess of the sacred mountain, who shapes life as if it were a cradle song. In some versions of the tale, it is she who presses the clay, and she who gives the breath. Not a violent act, a maternal one. This was not a world of pure love, but neither was it without care. The Mesopotamians knew what it meant to live under a burden. Floods could erase villages. Kings could rise in cruelty. Famine came without warning, and still they built. Temples rose from mud brick. Ziggurats climbed like stairways to the unseen dot. Inside, oil lamps burned small flames, flickering in enclosed stone rooms. These lamps were not just for light. They were offerings, visible breath in the hush of temple darkness. Priests whispered prayers not to be heard with the ears, but with presence. The gods, they believed, preferred whispers, not because they were fragile, but because the sacred did not need shouting. It is in these quiet moments that stories were passed, written on tablets of clay, in fine cuneiform lines. The tale of Atrahasis, an ancient flood survivor. In it, the gods grow angry with humanity. Too loud, too many. So they send a plague, then a drought, and finally a flood. But Enki, the god of wisdom, warns one man, tells him to build a boat, to gather animals. To endure, it is a story older than Genesis, but not full of blame, rather full of rhythm, destruction, renewal, silence, breath, and afterward an offering. A promise not written in the sky, but burned in incense, laid on altars of stone. In Mesopotamia, religion was not distant. It was woven into the hours of the day. You awoke to chant. You cleaned the altars. You poured water for the gods as if they still lived among you, because, in a way, they did. Their statues were clothed, fed, washed, not as symbols, but as presence. To care for a god's image was to care for the divine body itself. And while the heavens stretched high, the sacred was near, right there on a pedestal, lit by flickering oil. You begin to feel the texture of that world. Stone underfoot, the smell of clay and heat, a hush so thick even your thoughts must lower their voice. You begin to sense what the Mesopotamians knew, that creation is not only beginning, but duty to be alive is to serve something higher, to wake and move with purpose, not imposed from above, but shaped within the bones. Even death followed the same logic. There was no grand paradise, no golden field, just the underworld, dark, dry, where dust is eaten and silence is complete. But the fear was not of punishment. It was of being forgotten. And so the living remembered. They poured water for the dead, spoke their names, left food on their graves. To forget was to let the soul fade completely. To remember was to keep it near, like a lamp in the corner of the room. And in this remembering, there was peace. The clay that formed the body would return to the earth. The breath would rise into the winds of Enlil, or sink into the waters of Enki. The whisper would remain. You rest now in the echo of those lamps, their glow dim but steady, not a light to guide, but a warmth to hold. The gods do not speak tonight. They do not need to. They have already whispered enough into the dust that shaped you, and the dust remembers. Chapter 8. The Turtle's Back. Iroquois stories of sky and earth before the rivers flowed, before the mountains stood, before the stars had names. There was Sky World, high above the clouds, a world of light and stillness, its trees bearing fruit no hand had ever picked, its winds soft as silence. And in the center of that world, a great tree, the tree of life. Its roots stretched in all directions. Its canopy touched the unknown. But one day, the tree was uprooted. No accident, no storm. It was removed on purpose, and from that open space in the earth above, a woman falls. She is not pushed. She does not scream. She simply begins to descend. Down through the clouds, down through the silence, toward a world that does not yet exist. She carries no tools, only handfuls of bark and seeds. She falls from Sky World and lands not on rock, not on fire, but on the back of a great turtle who rises from the waters to meet her. This is how land begins, not as conquest, but as kindness. The animals gather: beaver, otter, duck. They dive into the waters, one after another, searching for mud from the depths. Some do not return, but one often, the muskrat, resurfaces, gasping, mud clutched in tiny paws. The woman takes that mud, spreads it across the turtle's shell, and begins to shape it with care. With rhythm, the land expands with each gesture. Her hands, soft with intention, press the earth outward like dough beneath a steady palm dot. This is Turtle Island, a world built on patience, on small bravery, on shared effort. This creation story, told through generations of Iroquois voices, does not begin with a war among gods or a battle for dominion. it begins with a fall, and with a willingness of others to catch. The woman becomes known as Sky Woman. Some say she was with child when she landed. Some say she gave birth to twins. One brings light, the other shadow. But it is not a tale of good and evil. Not in the way Western stories often divide. Instead, it is about balance, day and night, sky and soil, breath and stillness. Everything has a place, not a hierarchy, a role. The turtle carries the world without complaint. The muskrat gives its strength without promise. The plants grow not because they are commanded, but because they are invited. Creation here is not a single act. It is ongoing, a slow, sacred layering of soil and song and story. Among the Iroquois, this story isn't a metaphor, it's a memory. The land is alive with it. The rivers remember. The trees carry it in their rings, and so do the people. Their ceremonies reflect the harmony set by Sky Woman's descent. Their longhouses echo her gesture, sheltering, spacious, aligned with the seasons. Corn, beans, and squash, the three sisters, are not just crops. They are family. They are grown together, fed together, respected together, because nothing stands alone. In the Iroquois mind, the world is a circle, not a ladder, not a chain. Everything that lives, animal, plant, water, stone, has a spirit. And that spirit has needs. And purpose to take from the world requires permission. And gratitude, even the smallest act, picking a berry, breaking a branch, must be met with thanks, a soft word, a quiet offering, a return. The earth is not a resource. She is a relative. And her story begins on the back of a turtle. You begin to feel that stillness now, a sense of weight beneath you, but not burden. Support, as if the ground itself remembers that it was once a shell. And the trees remember that they grew from gifts, not demands. In this worldview, humans are not rulers. They are caretakers, participants in a sacred balance. When a prayer is spoken, it does not rise to a single God. It flows outward to the sun, to the wind, to the beings who make the world breathe. And when death comes, it is not a departure from the earth, but a return to it, back into soil, back into the circle, back into the turtle's back. You imagine yourself not falling from the sky, but already here, resting gently on the shell of something ancient and generous. You do not need to rise, or reach, or conquer. Only listen, only tend. And in that tending, you begin to remember your own place in the circle, not higher, not lower, just held, just needed. The land expands, still, whenever a story is spoken with care, and beneath it all, the turtle waits, steady, quiet, unmoved. Chapter 9. The Threads of Zoroaster. Light, darkness, and sacred choices. The high deserts of ancient Persia. Beneath the same sky that now watches over mountains and dust. A new kind of creation story takes root. It begins not with a fall, not with a flood, but with a choice. Not a clash between gods for dominance, but a deliberate act of separation between what uplifts and what deceives. At its center stands Ahura Mazda, the wise lord, not a king draped in thunder, but a being of still brilliance, whose very essence is light, order, and truth. He does not create out of boredom or wrath or hunger. He creates because he wills to do good. From his thought, the world takes shape, not in chaos, but in structured fire. Sky, water, earth, each emerges with meaning, each placed with care. This is not a spontaneous world. It is intentional, formed with sacred purpose. But from the beginning, there is opposition. Angra, Minu, the destructive spirit. He is not evil in the way we often imagine, but he is the force that resists, that twists, that seeks to undo what is ordered. He is not equal to Ahura Mazda. He is a shadow that cannot exist without light. Still, his presence is real. His influence spreads through lies, decay, cruelty, confusion. But Zoroaster, the prophet who gave voice to this sacred system, teaches that the world is not lost. It is not broken. It is in motion. Time unfolds as a drama between these forces. Light and dark, truth and falsehood, Asha and Druj. Asha is the great principle of order. It is not just law. It is harmony. The way a flame dances upright. The way water flows clean. Druj is its distortion. It turns the straight line into a snare, makes what is false appear comforting, and leads the spirit to forget its path. But in this story, the divine does not act alone. Creation is not something done to the world. It is something shared with those who live in it. This is where you enter, not as a passive figure, but as a being with choice. Every decision, no matter how small, carries spiritual weight. To be honest, to feed the poor, to tend a sacred flame. These are not gestures. They are battles, tiny victories in the long war between what should be and what is. The Zoroastrians do not fear the end. They call it Frosh Shokredi, a final renewal, a time when all corruption is cleansed and the world becomes as it was meant to be. But that time is not yet. Now, the world still struggles. The soul still chooses. This sacred tension is not meant to frighten. It is meant to remind that every moment contains meaning. A blade of grass, a kind word, the tending of a temple fire that must never go out. Fire, especially, is sacred. To Zoroastrians, it is the symbol of divine truth. Not to be worshipped, but to be honored as the purest reflection of Ahura Mazda's presence. It is kept burning in temples quietly, carefully, with hands that understand its gravity. Even the smallest flame can hold the weight of heaven. And so, the rituals become part of the cosmic order. The prayers, spoken in the Avestan tongue, carry not just hopes, but structure. Zoroaster's hymns, the Gathas, are not poetic dreams. They are instructions for how to live rightly, how to align the inner world with the greater light. And yet, Zoroaster does not command belief through fear. Appeals to the mind, to conscience. He speaks often of the good mind, vohu mana. It is through this faculty that humans can recognize Asha and walk toward it. Even the gods, or divine emanations, are not beyond understanding. They are Amesius Bentis, holy aspects of Ahura Mazda's being, each one representing a spiritual virtue, not distant deities, but spiritual companions. Spenta, Armati, devotion, Kosha Fro, Varya, rightful dominion, Horvat, wholeness, Emeritet, immortality. Together, they offer a map of what it means to live well, to live wisely, to live as if your every step echoed beyond the present. And in this way, Zoroastrianism does not ask for blind obedience. It asks for mindful participation. You begin to feel the difference between rule and rhythm, between fear and faith. This is a religion that believes in the capacity for good, that even in a world where darkness presses in, light can still grow. Not all at once, but like a dawn, slow, certain dot, and in the quiet hours when your own choices weigh heavy. This story steadies you, not by saying the path is easy, but by reminding you that it matters. Every truth told, every hand offered, every moment of restraint when anger could have ruled. These are your threads in the great tapestry, because Ahura Mazda did not make the world perfect. He made it possible, and the rest is still unfolding. The soul is not lost. It is choosing, even now, even here. Chapter 10, From Bone and Breath. Mayan creation in the Popol Vuh, the lush heart of Mesoamerica. Beneath the broad leaves of ceiba trees, and the thick breath of ancient jungles, a sacred story unfolds. It is not told in a straight line. It coils, pauses, returns again. It remembers what was forgotten and forgets what was never meant to last. This is the Popol Vuh, the sacred book of the Keish Maya. Not scripture in the way others know it, but a deep, rhythmic memory, part myth, part history, part breath. It begins before human time, when the sky still pressed close to the sea, and the gods murmured in the dim spaces between. They wanted to create beings who could speak their names, tend the earth, honor the balance. But creation in this world is not instant. It is not perfect. It is not easy. The gods first shaped beings of mud. They are soft, formless, unable to hold themselves together. They melt in the rain, dissolve without voices. So the gods begin again. Next comes wood, figures stronger than before. They walk, they multiply, but they feel nothing. They do not remember their makers. They live without soul. These wooden people spread across the land, but live as shadows. They break the harmony. They forget gratitude, and so the gods call forth a flood, a cleansing. Even the animals rise against them, biting, tearing, as if the jungle itself remembers who was meant to tend it and who was not. It is a painful undoing, but not a cruel one, because in this cosmology, mistakes are allowed. Even by God's creation is a process, a careful learning of what brings spirit to form. And finally, they find it, not mud, the lifeblood of the Maya, not just food, but essence. They shape humans from white and yellow corn, mixing it with water, bone, and breath. These are the true people, people of balance, of memory, of offering. They are not perfect, but they are alive in the way that matters, with spirit, voice, and story. The Popol Vuh tells us something quietly radical, that the soul is not gifted instantly. It must be grown, shaped through effort, tested through time. You begin to feel it, how the world, even now, still remakes itself, still searches for the right mix of elements to hold something sacred. The gods in this story are not distant. They are present, involved, watchful, heart of sky, heart of earth, the shapers, the makers. They laugh, they question, they adjust. They are not omnipotent, but they are intimate, and their world is layered. Not a flat timeline, but a cycle. Life folds in on itself. Heroes are born, descend to the underworld, and rise again. The hero twins, Hanap and Sabalank, become central in this cycle. They travel to Xibalba, the dark place beneath the surface, to face gods of death, deceit, and illusion. There, in the shadows, they play a game of fate, poketope, coup, the sacred ball game. Their victory is not brute strength, but cleverness, patience, timing. And when they die, they are not gone. Their essence rises one as the sun, one as the moon. Even death in the Popol Vuh is not an end. It is a change of form, a continuation of sacred breath. The jungle reflects this too, always decaying, always blooming. Each fallen leaf becomes soil. Each root, split by time, makes way for a seed. The Mayan view of creation honors this rhythm, not finality, but flow. Even their calendar, intricate and vast, moves in cycles. Time is not spent, it returns. Each bactan, each ton, spins the wheel of becoming again. This is a world where beginnings are revisited, where ceremony matters, where offerings are not bribes, but balances. Copal smoke rises like a bridge between here and the unseen. Drums echo the beat of the earth's own heart. And maize is not just eaten, it is praised. The Popol Vuh is not a story to conquer. It is a story to return to read slowly, to breathe with. It teaches that humans are not made to rule over creation, but to care for it, to remember the gods who tried, failed, and tried again to make us from the right substance. And perhaps that is the quiet wisdom of it all, that sacredness lies not in being flawless, but in being formed from something meaningful. You imagine now what it means to be made from maize. Not gold, not stone, but grain. Something that grows, feeds others, dies, and rises again. Your breath slows. The jungle hushes, and somewhere, beneath canopy and starlight, the gods still listen, still shaping, still waiting, still breathing. Chapter 11. The Quiet Mirror. A soft reflection on beginnings across cultures. Across time, the question returns, where did we come from? And quietly, across generations, people answer not with proof, but with stories. Stories shaped by rivers and dust, by stars, mountains, hunger, and sleep. Each one different, each one sacred. A cosmic egg cracks open. A lotus blooms on the back of a turtle. A god speaks light into the void. A spider weaves a world from threads of dream. Not one answer, but a tapestry of beginnings, soft threads woven in different colors. Each strand showing what mattered most to the ones who told it. Creation stories are mirrors. They do not try to explain the world like a diagram. They reveal how humans saw their place in it, in Egypt. The world begins with Adam rising from the waters of none, a lone figure birthing air. Sky and earth from his own body in Mesopotamia. The gods shape order from chaos, slain Tiamat, the dragon of salt water, to form the sky from her divided corpse. In China, Pangu awakens inside a dark egg, his body growing for thousands of years, until, at last, he pushes apart earth and sky, his breath becoming wind, his voice thunder. These stories are vast, sometimes violent, sometimes still, but even in their differences, a rhythm echoes through them, a sense of something being made, not just once, but again and again. Imbori. Traditions. Creation unfolds like a breath held too long. Ranjanu and Papatanuku, Sky Father and Earth Mother, are pressed together in a tight embrace. Their children trapped in the darkness between them. One by one, the children try to separate their parents to let in light and space. And when they succeed, the world begins, but not without grief. Ranjanu tears still fall as rain, and Papatranuku's sighs still rise as mist. Creation in this telling is not joy alone. It is sorrow, distance, and a longing that comes with awakening. And maybe this, too, is part of why creation stories matter, not to teach how things work, but to hold the ache of beginning. Because to begin is to break from silence, to shape something out of nothing, to feel the cost of light. In the Rig Veda, an ancient hymn wonders, who really knows? Who will hear proclaim it? Whence was it produced? Whence is this creation? Even the sages do not pretend certainty. Even in the earliest sacred songs, there is awe and doubt. And yet, the telling continues. Some stories say the world came from sound, a single vibration, a syllable echoed into matter in Hindu cosmology. This is a sound that contains all sounds, the breath of all beginnings. In other traditions, the world arises from silence, from the stillness before names, before fire, before knowing, from a darkness not empty, but expectant, perhaps in a way. Both are true. Every beginning is a balance between stillness and movement, the pause before breath, the stir of a heartbeat in the womb, the hush before the first light of dawn. Creation is not only an origin, it is a rhythm. The Mayans understood this in the Popol Vuh, where the gods tried and failed to create true humans, first from mud, then from wood, before finally shaping them from maize. They learned, they adapted, they honored the process creation. There is not a single act. It is an unfolding, and you begin to feel it, to how the world, even now, is still becoming. Every seed that breaks the soil, every child that draws breath, every time you change, each moment a quiet echo of the first moment. Maybe that's why these stories endure. Not because they explain, but because they remind that life is fragile, that existence is sacred, that the act of becoming is still happening. You might think of the body, how it renews itself in sleep, how breath slows, cells repair, dreams stitch together the scattered edges of thought. Even at rest, you are beginning again. And so, too, the cosmos. Not finished, but unfolding. Some physicists now say the universe is still expanding, still stretching outward into cold silence, still writing its next line. Ancient people did not need telescopes to know this. They looked to the sky, felt the pull of tides, watched the stars return in cycles, and they understood the beginning never ends. In Navajo tradition, there are 5 worlds, each one a stepping stone in the story of emergence. Humans rise from the first, small and dark, through trials and mistakes, into the light of the 5th world, this one. But even now, the journey is not over. The next world waits. Somewhere ahead or within creation, then is a path, a spiral, pulse, a mirror that shows not just where you came from, but where you are going. And that mirror does not shout. It reflects gently. It shows you that beginnings do not need to be grand. They can be soft, unseen, like a whisper in the dark, like a thought before words. So now, as you rest, you drift through the echoes of these stories, not to solve them, but to feel them, to see how each one held a people's hopes, their fears, their love for the land that held them. You've heard the world begin in silence, in eggs, in mist, in mud, in sound, in separation, in sacrifice, in song, in still. It begins again, every breath, every morning, every small decision made in quiet dot. Creation is not behind you. It is beside you, around you, within you, and maybe. Now, as your thoughts soften, as your body becomes still, the world is being made again. Not loudly, not all at once, but softly, in your sleep, in your dreams.